How you doing? This is your boy official Sahar TV, and this will prove to you that Palestine doesn't exist. Let's take a look.
The Palestinian-Israeli conflict is obviously headline news around the world. And because I'm a three-time Emmy-winning filmmaker, journalist who specializes in history, people have come to me and asked me to comment on Palestine from a historical point of view. Okay, from a historical point of view. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people running around today saying we are Palestinians, but from a historical point of view, Palestine never existed. Not once, not for a moment. There's no prime minister, king, queen that you can point at. There was never an independent Palestinian state, kingdom, anything. The Christian Bible doesn't mention Palestine once. The Hebrew Bible doesn't mention Palestine once. The Holy Book of Islam, the Quran, does not mention Palestine once. Why? Because it didn't exist. The area was known 1700 years before Jesus as Canaan. And there were a bunch of tribes vying for domination, in this area where I'm broadcasting from now.
A point that a lot of people will make after hearing this claim is, so what? Pakistan is also not mentioned in the Quran. Does that mean it doesn't have the right to exist? You have to understand that the fact that Palestine, if it did exist, the fact that Jerusalem is in Palestine, in the region of Palestine, and that it's not mentioned not in the Hebrew Bible, in the Christian Bible, and in the Quran, that's absurd. How come? That's the location where all of the stories took place. Some of the stories took place. The Quran is a bit different. But it doesn't make sense that it's not mentioned.
The Holy Land. The Jews, the tribe of Judah, won out. That's why we're called Jews. That's why I'm called a Jew. I'm a descendant of Judeans. And in this area, there have been 4 independent states, none of them Palestine, all of them Jewish. In ancient times, Judah, Judea, Israel. In modern times, Israel. So what's going on here? I mean, what's going on here, there was anybody going to church Easter time knows Jesus was crucified, and on top by the Romans, and on top of his cross, they put a sign, King of the Jews, not King of the Palestinians, not King of Palestine, King of the Jews. Jesus went to Jerusalem, the capital of ancient Judea, the Jewish kingdom, to celebrate Passover, the Last Supper, and he got crucified by the Roman occupiers, the Western European colonials that took over this area and dominated the Jews, and they crucified Jesus as they crucified tens of thousands of Jews at the time. Why? Because the Jews were rising in revolution against the foreign occupiers. The indigenous Jews wanted freedom. In fact, the Jewish struggle for Judea is the longest lasting liberation movement in human history. There was no Palestine. Palestine was invented by the Roman occupiers. It's not an Arabic word. It's a Latin word. And why did they make it up? Because they wanted to stick it to the indigenous Jews who were giving them trouble. Judea was Rome's Vietnam. They were stuck here. The Jews kept fighting for freedom. And then when the Romans crushed the Jews, sold them by the hundreds of thousands into slavery, destroyed the temple that Jesus visited, destroyed Jerusalem, the capital of Judea, destroyed the Jewish kingdom of Judea. Then, after they dispersed the Jews to the 4 corners of the earth, they said, now we're going to stick it to you. We're going to rename your country, Judea, Palestina. Why? Because 700 years earlier, there had been a people, Aegean occupiers, people from the area of Greece, Crete, that had come to occupy Judea. It's in the Bible, the famous fight between David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine. David became king of Judea.
Philistines have literally no connection with modern day Palestinians. Philistines come from Crete. They're not Arab in any way, they're not Muslim in any way, but modern day Palestinians claim that they descend from Philistines. But if they descend from Philistines, that means that they don't descend from Muhammad and Arabia. No connection between the two.
They tried, they couldn't beat militarily. The Bible talks about that hot Philistine woman, Delilah, who tried to seduce Samson, the Jewish hero, into submission. The Philistines were the enemies of the Jews in the Bible. They had disappeared 700 years before Jesus, before the Romans. And then after the Romans conquered Judea, they said, now we're going to show you. We're going to rename your Jewish land, Judea, Palestina, to honor those ancient enemies of yours that no longer even exist. And sure enough, Palestina became a province, not an independent state, not an Arab state, a province in the Roman Empire, the pagan Roman Empire, and then in the Christian Roman Empire out of modern-day Turkey, the Byzantium. And then the Arabs arrived 2,200 years after the Jews. Where did the Arabs come from? They came from Arabia, obviously. And they conquered Judea. They conquered the province of Palestina, and it became part of their empire. And then came the Crusaders, and then came the Ottomans, and then came the British. Always Palestine as a province in an occupational empire. Never an independent state, certainly not an independent Arab state. And then, miraculously, the Jews came back. It's never happened in history that an indigenous people that's exiled comes back like that, reclaims their land. But here's the rub. The British that occupied Palestine in 1946 hacked off 80% of Palestine and gave it to the Arabs. Yeah. Why don't we know that 80% of Palestine is in Arab hands? Because the British renamed it Jordan. And then they didn't give it to the local Arabs. They took a family from Saudi Arabia called the Hashemites, and they imposed them on the local Arabs, and they called it the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. To this day, this happened in 1946, and to this day, it's called Jordan.
The Hashemite kingdom hijacked the Arab country from the Arabs, because if the Palestinians that live there today, the Palestinians, if the people living there today that are considered to be Palestinians, if they remove the Hashemite kingdom, they have a Palestinian state because they are the majority in this land, 75% Palestinians. Now, another good point to make is that since we had the British Mandate of Palestine, 80% given to the Arabs, that means that we have 20% left. 20% left is modern day Israel. Now, that portion was also divided. So we have 20%. About 11% was given to the Jews of that 20%, and the rest was given to the Arabs, 9%. Out of the 11% given to the Jews, the Negev Desert was also given. The Negev Desert is a huge chunk of the land, probably symbolizes 30 to 40% of the land that's completely uninhabitable. You can grow fruit, you can grow vegetables, but the Jews were able to make it work. They worked on incredible irrigation systems. They were able to turn this soil into a magical agricultural piece of land that produced food, produced water, because the Jews were able to manage. It doesn't matter what the Jews are given, they're able to make their land flourish.
Get rid of the Hashemites, rename Jordan Palestine, and voila, you've solved the Middle East problem. But you see, that's not how it works. Even though the Jews are on something like 12% of the British-controlled province of Palestine, that's Palestine. Palestine's never whatever Arabs have in their hands. It's only whatever the Jews have. Any piece of territory that the Jews rule, that's Palestine. Why? Because basically the whole point of the exercise is to airbrush the Jews and Judea out of history. Rename Judea the West Bank. The West Bank? What's the West Bank? It's never mentioned in the Bible, in any Bible. In the Quran, it's never mentioned.
It's the West Bank of the Jordan River.
But don't call it Judea, because then it might sound like the Jews belong in Judea. Just turn history on its head. The indigenous people are suddenly the occupiers, and the occupiers are suddenly indigenous. Again, why? To airbrush the Jews out of history. Why? Airbrushing them out of history is a prelude to actually destroying them physically. It's a preface to genocide. So why are all these people shouting from the river to the sea? Why are they pro-genocide? Why, some 75 years after the Holocaust, people want to do it again? Well, either they're brainwashed by the media. I'm a member of the media, I know how it goes. Or they're ignorant, they're just ignorant. Or they're dumb. Or they're Jew haters.
Great video. Really sums up the conflict in a short, concise video. I can add only one more thing. The Palestinian identity was only invented in 1964 by Yasser Arafat. It was only invented to oppose Zionism, to oppose the Jews, to kick the Jews, to turn the local Arabs into the indigenous people. Exactly what he said. Zuhir Moshen, a PLO executive, once said in 1977, in an interview that he gave, that the Palestinian people don't exist. Only for political means this identity was created. There's no difference between the Palestinians to the Jordanians, to the Syrians, to the Lebanese. They're all Arabs from the Arabian Peninsula. They all speak Arabic like the Arabs would. So this identity is completely made up. And it was made up to erase the Jews from the land. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can get to a lot more people. And until next time, see you.